Winnie Laban.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Kia ora, talofa lava, and warm Pacific greetings. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the first reading of the Misuse of Drugs Amendment Bill 2010. As an attempt to help get pure methamphetamine, or P, off the streets of New Zealand, I'm very happy to support this bill through to Select Committee. However, I have a number of concerns which I will discuss later, but for now I want to discuss some of the effects of P and what it does to New Zealand and New Zealanders. As we all know, methamphetamine is incredibly addictive, more so than other drugs such as cocaine. The Expert Advisory Committee on Drugs has noted that users of methamphetamine move more quickly from initial use to regular use, and then are more likely to move on to dependency, and we all know the results of that. Even if someone receives treatment and overcomes their addiction to P, the psychological and emotional consequences are likely to remain with them for years. The long-term effects of P on the individual have been well documented and include fatal kidney and lung disorders, brain damage, depression, violent and aggressive behaviour, and lowered resistance to illness. But as we all know, the effects on the individual, while extremely harmful, are only half the story. The impact on the family, the impact on close friends of addicted individuals is devastating, not to mention the impact and the effects on our communities and our wider society. We all know the links that P and the manufacture of P has with crime. It is hugely profitable for gangs and many other groups, including white-collar criminals, and addiction to the substance can spawn criminal activity in itself. This bill intends to make the manufacture of P more difficult by restricting access to ephedrine and pseudoephedrine, some of the active ingredients in methamphetamine. Currently, pseudoephedrine is available over the counter in cold and flu remedies from pharmacies. Reclassifying both pseudoephedrine and ephedrine as B2 controlled drugs will make this impossible in the future and will hopefully lead to a restriction of supply for manufacturers of P and help to control the prevalence of the drug. And I just wanted to quote Ian Lees-Galloway, my colleague and spokesperson on alcohol and drugs on our side, that to look at an interesting comparison with alcohol and how far more people are much more affected by harmful drinking. As I said before, this alone is enough to warrant this bill's progress to Select Committee, where I hope it can be further deliberated upon. Firstly, one of the things which my colleagues have emphasised that I hope will be discussed is the possible effect on the availability of cold and flu remedies to New Zealanders. Attention will have to be paid to the fact that approximately 20% of cold and flu remedies available currently contain pseudoephedrine, and the possibility of securing effective alternatives to those remedies. Certainly it should never be the case that New Zealanders who have never approached methamphetamine or the manufacture of methamphetamine should have to pay a doctor's fee and prescription fee for cold and flu medicine. If this is what results from this legislation, then we have a clear case of most of the population of New Zealand being adversely affected by the actions of a small minority. Secondly, we are not sure as yet how much of the ephedrine and pseudoephedrine used in the manufacture of P is actually sourced in this way. It is likely that the vast majority is gotten overseas and imported separately. Therefore, it seems strange that at the same time as the government is supposed to be restricting P manufacturers' access to their ingredients, they are also cutting funding to customs and police. They are restricting access in one sense and opening up opportunities for criminals in another. To be effective, this measure needs to be combined with more targeted border enforcement, not a weakened customs service. Another area where I'm concerned about with cuts is that the government are making huge cuts to mental health. This has led over the last 2 years to the restriction of services that would help with addiction and addiction-related problems and support for families. Just this year, $12 million was cut to mental health services as they were cast as low priority services, and DHB funding was cut. Surely, to have an integrated and effective plan to rid New Zealand of P and its associated problems, we need to be funding the services which provide the support much needed, which can help people remove the scourge of P from their lives. In short, as a measure to help restrict the manufacture of P, I support this bill to Select Committee. It is hugely important that we do what we can to rid New Zealand of P and its associated harms, but I do see a number of weaknesses in the implementation of this plan, including the failure to adequately back up this measure with increased border control and increased funding to addiction mental health services. And in the words of our leader Phil Goff and our Law and Order spokesperson Clayton Cosgrove in October last year when they were talking about this, they said Labour supports any move that gets P off New Zealand streets. There is a contradiction in resourcing, with most ingredients for P coming from overseas at a time when police and customs have suffered budget cuts. Police and customs are being asked to do more with less. There is concern law-abiding Kiwis are being forced to pay a doctor's fee and prescription fee for cold and flu medicine because of the actions of a few. On the face of it, the innocent are being whacked with the extra cost, and we're not sure what effect that will have on the perpetrators of crime. We question the depth of their plan to wage war on P, national government's war on P, with cuts to mental health funding in both budgets and the closure of addiction and treatment centres under this government. Thank you.
I call Nicky Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.